we can think twice now here. Number one, we can see that the GCC is a huge market, but at the same time, you can see the completely untapped market when we look at the other side in terms of geography. And this is where we play a role. And we'll continue, please, if we can move forward. So in terms of general market information, so it's a diverse market, we said, and in terms of economic diversity, but also healthcare systems, demographically, epidemiology, but also in terms of cultural, political. I mean, many of the CNN countries are within those countries, but the opportunities are still huge, and especially when we talk about the Gulf. If we move forward, please. We talk about some common traits to all the markets. So low to medium rate of healthcare expenditure. That means it's a huge opportunity to grow, primarily public healthcare, but there is a huge potential to move into the private sector, and that's what we're seeing in the Gulf states. That's what we see with the plans that are put in Saudi Arabia, where the government would like to be acting as a regulator and would like to hand over the healthcare to the private sector. It's a tender-driven procurement, and we can see that price and volume let's say, do matter, and hence our role in introducing, value-based procurement, especially within the Gulf region. And there is a prevailing distributors' business models, hence the need for help to identify the right distributors, most probably, but also this also reduces the risk on one hand, but on the other hand, splits the profits with the distributors. But we are seeing more and more in the Gulf, again, potential of complete ownership of foreign companies in terms of, and they are trying to attract as much as possible foreign companies and investors to come to the Gulf, and they are opening and offering a lot of incentives for this. And this is specifically in the Gulf area. There's a public policy expertise and consultation, but like again, in the Gulf, we're starting with our public consultations, and we did this when we spoke about data privacy. We could input our opinion and how this affects patients and healthcare. So it's a mosaic, let's say, within that area, with a specific bubble, which is the Gulf, which is growing, aided, of course, with the wealth related to the oil, but also with the young population and the stress by the government to put plans to develop this population. If we move forward, please, and we're almost done. I would like to mention also that in terms of trends, and we have COVID-19 induced a drive for digitization and also collaboration with the healthcare industry. There's a push for privatization, and we are seeing HTAs being developed, like in Saudi Arabia, they developed the first HTA group, and we are working with them now, but also the same thing is happening with other countries. We are seeing government drive for localization. They are looking for FDIs, they're looking for investments. And one of the examples, and I would like to give that example specifically, Dubai Science Park, with whom MECOMED has built, let's say, a good partnership. The Dubai Science Park is offering now for companies or startups who would like to start within the region. They're offering them the facilities, the space, and even giving them the possibility to have the right licenses to operate there. And you can contact us or Dubai Science Park, and we'll be very happy, and we can organize a meeting during Arab Health as well. And finally, there's a shift towards tenders, as we mentioned, like in Nuco in Saudi Arabia. What are the opportunities? We spoke about the population and also the aging of the population. And the problem with NCDs and the problem with this epidemiology in the area is that it hits both groups of population, which is an opportunity for our companies to support and give solutions to the people there. And it was mostly unregulated market, and that's what we are changing. Prepared ground for some developed countries, like in the GCC, we are seeing the regulations being shaped, but also developed and radiating from there to other countries. In the GCC, we are seeing it very clearly. Our MECOMED Code of Ethics has been adapted and adopted and used among all the Gulf countries, but also among many of the other countries around the area. So value-based healthcare is being driven, and we are starting to see the interest, and we are going to support a university in Saudi Arabia. This is a project that is now in place in order to teach value-based procurement so that we can help the authorities in moving forward. Finally, we have business hubs like Dubai Science Park I mentioned, but there are others, especially like now also Saudi Arabia is pushing companies to localize in Saudi Arabia and to try to work from there. The next slide, please, will show a portion of the regulation. I will not, can we move to the next slide, please? Yes. So we have worked very hard as MECOMED on the regulation in order to have a database, in order to be informed, and in order to publish on regular basis to all our members all the information regarding the changing regulations within the local market. There is an attempt of let's say, harmonization, and we're pushing our way into trying to engage with authorities to able to build capacities with them, and that's what we're doing, not only in the Gulf, across the whole region. So these are, the next slide will show, the last slide will show, these are our members. And again, MECOMED is the voice of the industry with the authorities and with the providers in the whole Middle East and Africa. And as a voice of all these companies, and our family is growing. Actually, we grew from 4 to 50 from the day of inception of MECOMED. We can see that our, let's say, voice is really quite heard, and we are very happy to cooperate with ABHI and your companies to be able to support you in the region. Should you need anything, you can put in the box. We can discuss later, but also you can connect with us directly. Thank you, Neil. Thank you all for organizing this, and have a good meeting, and we'll be with you.
Thank you, Rami. We'll hand over now to Craig McLaren now for the opportunities and challenges in the region. Over to you, Craig.
Thanks, Neil, and thanks, Rami and Neville before. So yeah, morning everybody. My name is Craig McLaren. I guess it says, although it says I'm an independent consultant, I guess my credibility in talking to you about this region is in the fact that I lived in either Saudi Arabia or the UAE off and on for 30 years from 1987 in healthcare, and for 25 of those years I worked for Johnson & Johnson, heading up their medical device and diagnostic businesses pretty much from 1997. So and that covered the area that Rami was talking about, Middle East Africa. So in those years, I came across, we had responsibility for 14 business units in over 50 countries in total. So probably had touch points with over 500 distributors. So finding, selecting, working with distributors became something that was a core competence for us, and our success depended on it. I was also, in fact, Rami, you'll be interested in this, next year is the 20-year anniversary since I met with 4 other gentlemen at Arab Health, 2002, and we first came up with the idea of establishing a medical device association in the region. So MECOMED, that Rami's just talked about and is chairman of, was born out of that discussion, and I was a past chairman before Rami. I now consult, advise, and work as a non-exec in healthcare. Neil, yeah, next slide. So, and Rami talked, I'm not going to go into this because Rami's really covered it, but there's risk and reward for the Middle East. It's the market opportunity is very attractive. The fundamentals are good, as you can see in the bottom left-hand side. But there is risk in terms of political and economic risk, and you know, without spelling out some of those recently, obviously, you know, going back over the last 10 years, Arab Spring, some of the economic impacts of the oil price decline, those are things that, you know, you need to bear in mind as you look at these markets. But the potential rewards can be very high. But it isn't an easy market. A lot of people think that accessing the Middle East is easy. It's not. There are challenges, and you really need to get organized around how you access those markets, particularly around pricing, reimbursement, and government affairs. Next slide. So Rami also talked about the GCC in particular. So just one slide on the GCC. As you look at market entry into the GCC, consider what business model you are, and that may also depend on what size of organization you are, whether you're an SME or a more established size organization. But what sort of affiliate presence are you going to have in the region? Local partner, distributor? Are you going to have an agent? Are you going to have, some people look at sometimes appointing a master distributor for the GCC, one person who then appoints sub-distributors. I personally have a view on that. I'm not sure that's the best way forward. I think you need a focused distributor in each market, although the models are changing. And as Rami alluded to, you can now have a joint venture in Saudi Arabia, and in fact, UAE is moving towards 100% ownership. But local presence on the ground, I think, as the, if you like, manufacturing organizations, a really important presence to have to make a difference. Get to know the market, know the opportunity, and make sure you understand what's happening in terms of stakeholders on the ground. Next slide, please. Yeah, if you follow through, Neil, just drop those down, all of them. Okay, so in choosing a distributor, what's really, I'm not going to go through all of these, but just very quickly pick out a few. It's really important that, I guess, the two fundamentals that are important is you find a potential partner that you have chemistry with. I think the relationship is so important to your future success, and the fact that you can strike a good relationship and the trust and the chemistry is right. It's important that you have a shared vision for the business. And then there's a degree of flexibility on both sides. Don't forget that a lot of these distributors, their backgrounds was as traders, and so negotiation is something that they are very, very good at, and so always be prepared for that when you go into discussions with distributors. I've put Arab Health pitfall there. What I mean is, so many companies, and Paul and I have talked about this lots, so many companies go out, Arab Health's a great event, but it's not necessarily the best process for finding a distributor. And I see lots of companies on stands out there in the British or Scottish or Welsh pavilions who are there for the second, third year in a row, and they haven't actually yet found those distributors, because Arab Health, everyone's going to come up promising you the earth. It's not the best way to actually find and perform any sort of due diligence on finding the right partner. So you know, Arab Health has a great value, but not necessarily in finding distributors. And there's a better way to go about that. I think it's important to understand exactly what the reputation is of the distributor, what their entire portfolio is, and what sort of relationship you want with them. What's the role and responsibility that you're both going to play in the relationship. Next slide. So the larger company access in the Middle East, and a lot of these companies, you've seen those brands already. Many of these, in fact, are members of MECOMED. And so the larger organizations come in to the Middle East and usually have quite a lot of resource and therefore can build a strong presence. So it's really about building that strong market access and regulatory capability, and membership of MECOMED gives them that partly as well. Strategic management of distributors, and that's really a much more, if you like, proactive approach to managing distributors and the strategies in market. Professional education, which is really important, so target the clinical as well as the non-clinical stakeholders and actually invest in that space to build equity in terms of your brand, get closer to customers, and I think it's really important that you also bear in mind the risk and reward, but bear in mind some of the challenges financially in dealing in the region. So strong fiscal discipline is really important to your future success as well. Start as you mean to go on, in other words. Next slide. And for the smaller organizations accessing the Middle East, be aware that there are regulatory hurdles, and how are you going to manage them as a small organization? So pick the right partner as a distributor. So, you know, you can be looking at distributors in the market that are big established names, or you could have a mid-sized distributor. Sometimes people that will approach you can put up a really good story, but they're actually a one-man band sort of operation. So you need to get to know what their setup is and what their reputation in market is. So think beyond who you meet at Arab Health and actually get into the markets where they are. So if they're in Saudi Arabia, go and visit Saudi Arabia, visit one or two distributors, see what their presence is on the ground and meet their people. Knowledge of the healthcare landscape is really important, beyond just what perhaps DIT or Medilinks organizations can give you. So it's not just the research but get beyond that. What's the strength of the network and the relationships you can access through people like MECOMED, ABHI, SDI, AHSNs. So speak to people with relevant experience that have been out there, that have operated in that landscape, and get to know how they can help. I think it's always important that you look at a beachhead market. So when you look at the Middle East, clearly the GCC is probably the more attractive markets, and within the GCC, often people use the UAE as the first landing space. Perhaps some of the regulatory barrier is slightly easier than Saudi because of the Saudi FDA, but I would say that Saudi is still the largest market, so it's important to focus on Saudi as well. But choose one or two markets to focus on early. And next slide. So with that, it's really the opportunity for the Middle East has never been better than it is now for either small or large organizations. The fundamentals are good, but like a lot of markets, it comes with some element of risk. So understand what the risk is, manage if you like, mitigate the risk, but go ahead and take that wind of opportunity into the Middle East. So good luck.
Thank you, Craig. That was a great talk. Thank you very much for your time there. That was great. Now we can hand over to Paul Benton from the ABHI.
Hi there. Yeah, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you. Real pleasure to be part of the event today and speaking with you. My name is Paul Benton. I head up the international division of the Association of British Healthcare and HealthTech Industries, ABHI. And as part of our work to support UK SMEs to export, we're very much focused on a number of different areas, shaping trade policy, as well as providing trade expertise and guidance, access to our networks overseas. But we also run a fairly extensive program of trade promotional activity in markets around the world, which is in part obviously what I wanted to touch on with you all today. You've had some fabulous insights from Rami and from Craig, and as you've heard, really the Middle East is an incredible opportunity. It's important, a really important region for the UK health technology sector, and it's been a priority for UK companies for many years, and clearly will remain so into the future. So I just wanted to firstly echo some of the comments from Nev, from Rami, from Craig earlier. I'd absolutely advise companies to really look to engage with organisations, particularly like MECOMED, with the depth of knowledge and expertise that exists within the association, and with great consultants like Craig. But importantly, for UK SMEs, understanding where the support is available for that kind of export journey is sometimes half the battle. And I think again, really important that you look to industry associations here in the UK, and who are able to provide some support and guidance, and of course with the Academic Health Science Network, who increasingly doing a really fabulous job in terms of really trying to push that kind of trade agenda and support those SMEs to internationalize. So there is a lot of help available and out there through the Department of International Trade and other government organizations and so on as well. Sometimes just you've got to go out there and know where to look and find it. But if you contact any of the organizations on the call today, and indeed engage with UK government as well, then we're all here to be able to point you in the right direction. So next slide, please, if that's all right. So I wanted to take really the opportunity to tell you a little bit about how you can engage with opportunities in the region by sharing with you some of the activity and support that's available at Arab Health. I mean, as you've heard from Nev earlier and touched on a little bit from Craig, Arab Health is a huge and leading trade show for the Middle East region. It takes place every January in Dubai, although with one exception, notably this year, when because of the COVID disruption, it took place actually in June. But going forward, it's going to be back in its usual spot at the end of January, early February. It takes place at the World Trade Center in Dubai, and really over recent years, I would argue, has become the kind of blue ribbon event for the UK health technology sort of industry when it comes to those international shows. It's the show itself has been growing at an amazing rate and seems set to continue to do that going forward. Next January will be the 47th edition of the show. It tracks somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 companies, and usually in excess of 100,000 visitors. There are certainly more than 20 national country pavilions that participate in the show. I'm really proud to say that ABHI has been organising the UK Pavilion at the show for close to 30 years now. So we've been there, we've done it. We know how it works and so on. And over that time, we've really seen the UK presence grow substantially, and the activity around the show become ever more sophisticated. And the ABHI UK Pavilion is now often competing as the third largest country pavilion at the exhibition. Behind China and Germany, and very much head to head with the USA. So I think that really is kind of testament to how important the show is for UK companies looking to go into the Middle East. I'm delighted to say that despite the pandemic, our UK group is for next year is well over 1,000 square meters in size. It's still well over 100 companies that are going to be part of that group, and there's a huge amount of activity taking place. And the makeup of that UK pavilion is really from all points across the UK. So we work very closely with the devolved nations, with the English regions, with Department of International Trade, also with Scotland, with Northern Ireland. There's a huge amount taking place, and it's really quite a sort of cohesive presence, if you like, within the show. And of course, that's one of the things that being part of Arab Health is all about. It provides that visibility for you as exhibitors and as SMEs, and really helps to draw in crowds from across the region. Delighted again to be partnering with the AHSN network. So this sort of partnership started back in 2018 with an area that the AHSNs took in there, and a great amount of support that's available if you're able to be part of that. And as Nev mentioned, there's a few spots available, I think, still last few, if you want to reach out to them. So next slide, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what's on offer and how you can get involved. So there are a number of exhibition booths still available within the ABHI Pavilion. There are literally just a few left, though. It's less than a handful. They come in a range of sizes. And as mentioned, there's also the AHSN pod area too. So I think that arguably is probably a really fabulous way for companies to be able to engage and get to the show and get a really sort of solid, sort of tailored support around you, as it were, and make sure that you get the very most out of that show. There's a dedicated press and PR service around all of this. All of the stand packages that are available all come sort of fully kitted out and ready to go. And of course, ABHI and the HSNs will work very closely with you to make sure that you're connected to all of the different opportunities that are taking place and so on. So really solid sort of way of engaging and having a presence and being visible within the show. There are also opportunities to present your technology from the show floor, so delivered from the ABHI support booth, which is at the centre of the UK Pavilion. So if you have a look at a couple of the photos there, you'll see two of them together, one photo of a previous stand and one graphic, which is actually the booth that we're going to be building in the centre of our pavilion next year. And from that area, we have a sort of presentation area and so on, and companies are able to come on there and actually do their pitches and presentations to audiences through the duration of the show. And that stand as well in the centre of our UK group also provides lots of support and services to all of those exhibitors who are part of our pavilion. So a great opportunity there to be able to sort of tell your story, if you like, through that kind of presentation area. So for those companies then that want to visit the show, perhaps take advantage of the platform that Arab Health provides, but who perhaps don't want to take an exhibition booth or need that cost, we also offer a number of visitor packages. So they enable companies to base themselves in the ABHI UK pavilion and base themselves from that ABHI support booth for the pavilion, which is in the center of the group. And they give companies access to meeting rooms. We have product displays and showcases that are built in around the pavilion and around that stand, which again provide a shop window for companies to be able to have their products on display, and also provides those companies with access to hospitality, which is located on the top floor of that area as well. So quite a nice way for companies to be quite mobile in through the show and so on, without perhaps needing to have a physical presence. One of the initiatives that we started several years ago is our simulated surgery program as well. And there's, you'll see on the right-hand side, there's a quick photo of some of that in action. So again, based on that central ABHI booth in the ABHI pavilion on the ground floor, part of that is given over to a working operating theatre where we bring out a series of leading UK surgeons supported by their hospitals who then run through demonstrations and simulated surgery on a whole raft of different cutting-edge procedures and surgeries that are taking place there, and that is for an audience of physicians from across the region. So it's a very heavily promoted sort of offering, and again we use that as a way of really sort of driving engagement with our UK pavilion and bringing those end users, if you like, into the group. It's also a really nice way, frankly, of being able to bring both clinicians, providers and industry together to showcase the strength of the UK sector, and I suppose acts as a tool to be able to showcase some of those latest technologies actually in action. So again, there are opportunities for companies to get involved in some of that and actually work with some of those providers. Next slide, please. So wrapped around all of that kind of physical activity taking place from the physical sort of UK pavilion, we also have the virtual UK healthcare pavilion. So this is a platform that was created earlier this year to provide UK healthcare and life sciences organisations with the ability to showcase their products and connect with customers around the world. And you can see a couple of the pages there again on the right hand side. So the UK healthcare pavilion is going to act as a sort of virtual wrapper for the UK presence at Arab Health. Next year, it's going to be heavily promoted by a range of different stakeholders, and we're working closely with the Department of International Trade and so on with all of this to make sure that companies that are being part of the ABHI UK pavilion are visible both in the run-up, during, and after the show through that virtual pavilion. It's going to act effectively as a sort of digital directory of the UK companies at the show, and really be a bit of a gateway to engaging with a variety of different sort of meeting and buyer sort of opportunities that are being delivered at the show. The Department of International Trade are going to have a really strong presence at Arab Health next year. DIT are working very closely with ABHI. We're partnering on a whole variety of different activities and so on that are going to take place. And there's a huge amount of support that is on hand that you can tap into. There's going to be a contingent of commercial officers. So these are the DIT sort of market experts based in the different consulates and embassies around the region who will be coming into the show, and they'll be on hand for companies who are part of the pavilion and so on, to be able to have one-to-one meetings with them and obviously sort of pick their brains in terms of opportunities in the different countries. They're going to be based on that central ABHI booth in the pavilion on the top floor, and again, a number of those markets are looking at the potential now of being able to bring buyers with them as well, and again, there'll be the opportunity for companies to be able to actually engage and have meetings with those buyers that come with them. So all of those meetings, as I say, taking place on the ABHI stand, and a lot of that will be facilitated through the virtual UK Healthcare Pavilion that I just mentioned. So in addition, DIT are also looking at putting together a number of market briefings that will be taking place. Again, those events will be being taking place on that kind of DIT ABHI central area and so on. And again, companies will be able to book and come onto those and listen to those meetings outside of the sort of show times and so on. Alongside Arab Health, and I think Nev mentioned it right back at the beginning, that there's actually another really significant event taking place. So World Expo, or Expo 2020 as it's probably better known, it's a huge event. Participation from 190 or so countries around the world, in a bespoke sort of 1,100 acre site that has been constructed in Dubai, and it's a sort of almost year-long showcase of the best of what those countries have to offer. Importantly, the healthcare track of Expo 2020 is actually tagged to run almost in parallel with Arab Health this year, and the UK has a very significant presence at Expo 2020. So the little graphic that you can see there at the bottom of the slightly spiky structure and so on is a picture of the UK pavilion at Expo 2020, and it's really a significant event space along with all of the other country pavilions that are on the site. Throughout the course of Arab Health and so on, there are going to be a variety of different engagement events, receptions, seminars that are going to be taking place. There's going to be a UK reception for those healthcare folks that are here as part of Arab Health, taking place on the Tuesday evening, and so on. And details of all of this programming and so on will I'm sure be available shortly. But we're looking at how we cross-pollinate, if you like, the activity that's taking place at Expo 2020, and also what's happening at Arab Health within the ABHI UK Pavilion. So a whole raft of key opinion leaders from the UK and policymakers and so on due to be out there and involved in all of that. So next slide, please. So really just the last thing, I suppose, to say before I leave with that, I'm very happy to take questions and answer anything as best I can offline. But really just say, I really hope that you'll think about being part of the group with us and being at the show. It really is a great event. It's a huge opportunity for companies to be able to not only engage with customers, but learn about the region, and meet with prospective partners, and so on. The last 18 months, without question, have been incredibly hard for companies looking to grow and expand their sort of international footprint, and I think it really is fantastic that we're getting back to that international travel, and being able to sort of attend shows like Arab Health again. We'd certainly been super encouraged by recent changes to the UK's travel restrictions and their policies, making that obviously a lot easier going forward, and clearly the organisers of Arab Health, Informa, have demonstrated a really good record of running these large-scale events in a COVID safe way. Testament to the work they did back in June in having the show run this year. So we're very confident that that the show absolutely will go ahead. There's a big UK contingent going, and I hope, very confident that anybody engaging and going will have a really good experience. Happy to field questions offline, or talk on the chat now and so on. Looking forward to getting back to it after what has been a bit of a hiatus for the last 18 months. Thank you very much for listening to all of that, and yeah, speak soon.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks very much. And now we can hand over to Stuart from MEDOVATE. Over to you, Stuart.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Stuart Thompson, Managing Director from MEDOVATE. I'm here this morning to talk to you about our journey to the Middle East and our experience of Arab Health in 2019, and also our experience of actually doing business in the Middle East and getting our products into clinical hands. I would just like to say that we've been lucky enough to benefit from ABHI support and from Paul and his team, from the AHSN support as well. And also we've even contracted the consultant Craig that you've heard to help us out with our contacts and also regulatory strategy in the Middle East. So we're one of these companies that's benefited from all the expertise and services you've heard about this morning already. And I can tell you about now from our kind of pragmatic view. It'd be remiss of me not to introduce you to MEDOVATE. So next slide, please. We are a medical device technology development company that spun out of the NHS in 2017, we built up a team of technology engineers, regulatory professionals and business professionals to work alongside our NHS clinicians in England to take on certain medical devices in the airway, anaesthesia and surgery field and take those all the way through to market so that we could generate value uplift for our stakeholders and shareholders and really get these NHS invented technologies onto market. I'm pleased to say that the NHS benefits because they have a vehicle such as MEDOVATE to take these ideas through to market, but the NHS is also a shareholder of our vehicle, so benefits from our success as well. Next slide, please. We work with a number of hospitals that feed us our ideas, and we see lots of ideas per year. And our current technology portfolio is 5 technologies, but we're looking to build that over the coming months and years. Next slide, please. As of today, we focused on anaesthesia, surgical and critical care. And happy to talk about all of these devices, but the device that we've actually launching in the Middle East is SAFIRA, which is our first to market anaesthesia product. And next slide, please. So SAFIRA is a device for regional blocks, which is where a patient will have a part of their body, such as their arm or leg, anaesthetised for surgery. They may well be awake, or they'll have a light general anaesthetic to put to sleep. And our technology solves the problem you see in the picture on the left-hand side of your screen. That is a picture taken from B. Braun's website of a regional anaesthetic block. And the problem with that picture is the 2 pairs of hands, where you have an anaesthetist that's holding the needle and the ultrasound probe, and their assistant, an ODP in the UK, on the end of a syringe filled with an anaesthetic. Now, if the needle gets too close or into a nerve vesicle, and if the assistant injects above 20 psi of pressure, it can cause serious nerve damage, which is seen in around about 1 in 1,000 cases, where that would be irreparable nerve damage. And transient nerve damage is seen in up to 8% of the cases if you look at the published literature, where the patient would have to come back into hospital for nerve conduction studies after their surgery. So 4 anaesthetists at King's Lynn Hospital in the UK came up with the idea for SAFIRA some years ago. Next slide, please. Which is a simple infusion pump, which has a sterile syringe and then operators such as a hand operator or a foot pedal. Now, this syringe driver will never ever go above 20 psi of pressure, so under that level to be safe in terms of the infusion anaesthetic. But it will also make the procedure a 1-person procedure instead of a 2-person procedure, so frees up resources and has health economic benefits as well. We launched this product last year. We were lucky enough to get our FDA approval, our European CE approval, our Australian approval in the middle of a pandemic, and we then focused our sights on the Middle East. We've got some great clinical data that's coming out from the use of SAFIRA around the world. I'm really pleased to say that our anaesthetists that are using SAFIRA are being able to do successful nerve blocks with less anaesthetic than the traditional practice, which also has extra patient safety benefits as well. And earlier this week, we, the technology and the clinicians, won the Patient Safety Innovation of the Year Award from the Health Service General Awards, which was a fantastic accreditation for both the clinicians and the technology as well. So next slide, please. So we attended Arab Health in 2019, and we took a pod, which you can see in the bottom left-hand picture of your screen. Some people have asked on the chat room, what does a pod look like? That's what the pod looked like in 2019, and that was on the ABHI UK pavilion. You can see the actual head office of the pavilion in the top left-hand side of your screen, which is where the surgical demonstrations took place underneath, but the meeting rooms were upstairs, and they were brilliant because when you're networking and wanting to move beyond a on the stand chat to a let's go and have a more private conversation about distribution or how business could work, you could then get access to those meeting rooms to have those meetings. We did three things for Arab Health. We took a pod. We presented, one of our clinicians actually presented SAFIRA on the ABHI stand, and alongside Arab Health there are clinical conferences that are running, and there was a pain management conference was running where our clinicians could actually present SAFIRA and their clinical data, and that's a great way to engage both clinicians that are attending the Arab Health conference, but also businesses and distributors and business contacts that you may want to engage. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see our clinical inventor doing a surgical demonstration, and at the bottom right-hand, that was the actual clinical conference that the clinicians were able to speak at. So our objectives for Arab Health was to understand the Middle East business potential for both MEDOVATE and the SAFIRA technology, to understand the regulatory requirements that we would have to go through to launch our medical devices into Middle East markets, to meet with potential distributors. We're a very lean model in the UK, and our model to get our product out around the world without a direct sales force has been to engage distributors around the world, and we wanted to understand how we could engage distributors in the Middle East. We engaged clinicians through the clinical conference, and we were also interested because it's such a big exhibition, a bit like Medica for Europe. It's the Arab Health equivalent. So there's large medtech there, and ultimately MEDOVATE wants to be of interest to those large global medtech players from both our technology perspective, but potentially from a commercial and corporate perspective as well. So we were there for the whole Arab Health Conference, and over all the days there, we picked up over 130 contacts of interest for us, which we then took back to the UK to follow up afterwards. Had numerous meetings around the place, both internal and external to the Arab Health Conference. From kind of triaging all the contacts we took from the event, we managed to attain a distributor in Kuwait called Omnia Health, and we've got two distributors that we have been working on since 2019. Things take longer due to COVID, but ongoing discussions that are now coming to the end stage to engage distributors in both UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. That for us is a win from the Arab Health Conference to pick up those kinds of contacts. And we got a really clear regulatory strategy about what we needed to do and how we could get our product regulatory approved in the Middle East, which I'll talk about on the next slide. Next slide, please. So our experience of working in the Middle East so far over the last 2 years is it's a really enthusiastic business culture, and Craig mentioned and so have others mentioned that you've got to understand who you're doing business with. So understanding if we were looking for distribution partners, how those distribution partners are governed, how they're owned, do they have state permits to be a distributor, or are they looking to engage with other distributors as sub-distributors, which wasn't that attractive to us at the time to sell our products. And actually getting involved in those conversations early and understanding how the governance and the ownership structure works was really important to us, as was speaking to clinicians in the Middle East and understanding that they do know of these distributors and that they do have good traction on the ground and are selling them current products in our therapy areas to begin with. I would say that everything has taken a long time to actually do business in the Middle East. There are lots of layers of both process and paperwork at both the regulatory level to get regulatory approval, but also at the business level to actually get accreditation of the business model that you want to enter into and getting state permission to be able to go ahead and do that. To give you an idea, the distribution deal that we have engaged with Omnia Health, we had to then get that notarized by a UK notary, both that MEDOVATE was a UK commercial entity, the directors of MEDOVATE running the business and the distribution deal that we'd entered into with Omnia had to be notarized. It then had to have a stamp of approval from our local Cambridge Chambers of Commerce. It had to have a Q80 Chambers of Commerce stamp of approval. The UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office had to give that a stamp of approval, and then it had to be legalised by the Kuwait Embassy. That gave us the green light then to formally apply to the Kuwaiti Ministry of Health to say we've done all the commercial paperwork to allow our distribution deal with Omnia Health on our product to go ahead. And we then entered into a 6-month approval process with the Kuwaiti Ministry of Health to get regulatory approval to be able to actually launch our product. So even though we attended Arab Health in 2019, it's just now that we've, and COVID hasn't helped, but getting our Ministry of Health approval to actually launch our first product. Likewise, there's slightly different procedures in place in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, but the Saudi Arabia FDA for Class 2 medical devices such as ours, it's around about a 12-month regulatory process. But I would say it is worth the effort to go through this process in the Middle East with the right partners, because then you open up that market. We have a niche and novel product, and you have effectively gone through all state hurdles and regulatory hurdles to really then sell your product on a large scale in those niche healthcare markets. So my advice to you is speak to lots of people and do get the meetings in place beforehand, because it can be a really busy conference. But then you have to put a lot of effort in afterwards to engage with the right people and get the right paperwork and make sure you're partnering people that can help you with that paperwork. Having a notary in the UK that can do all of this work for you and notarize these documents can really help. But when you've gone through these hurdles, those markets are then open for you to sell your products and services. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Stuart. And thank you to all the speakers today. Stuart's our final speaker today. So we've got plenty of time if anyone here has got any questions. I know there's been a couple in the chat, I think, already. I think some of those have been answered within the chat. Is there any of them, Nev, that... Oh, Ian, sorry, you've got a question. You got your hand up. Would you like to fire away and ask your question?
Hi there. Yeah, afternoon, everyone. Great to hear all the good talks. Just more of a comment, really, from what Stuart's just said there about the legalization process and the notarization process to get into the Middle East. I work for a US-based medical device company, and we've had to do exactly the same thing, but on US soil. So we had to go through all the various different chambers of commerce for our, where our manufacturing base is, and we had to go through that process as well. Again, it was delayed by Brexit. Sorry, Freudian slip. It was delayed by COVID. But yeah, 20 device companies out there that have a US home base, then you will have to do the same thing in the US. So I just thought I'd add that comment.
Thank you, Ian.
I would like to comment on some of the facts mentioned. What MECOMED, just to make your life maybe easier, what MECOMED is working with all the authorities across the board, especially because of the pandemic. We're working very hard on the electronic submission of all the documents, and although you will need to have still to collect many documents, but I think what we're working with the regulators is to make it shorter and to make it electronic, so that you don't need to also hand submit and do it within the countries, but you can do it electronically. We started in various countries, including Egypt, and now with the UAE, Bahrain. So we're working on this, and we are updating our members on a regular basis on which countries are moving into electronic submission. I think you need to check on that, because this will facilitate a lot what you're doing, and you don't need to really forward by courier. And I mean, we know it has been a long process. All the authorities now are trying to make them short time to market, and this is where we are voicing the the interest of all our members, because this has been a pain, and some countries are starting to do way better than the others.
So I think from my perspective, you know, an electronic submission platform would be great. The process, when you know what you have to do, it's just a matter of doing that. The paperwork is not necessarily onerous. It's just making sure you're doing it in the right way, and so that therefore by the time it arrives at the Ministry of Health in Kuwait, all the document is signed in the right way. What I would say is also, having been through the US regulatory approval process and the European regulatory approval process, they take a lot of time and a lot of paperwork too. So it's just one of these, the nature of the business that we're in, we have to go through these processes to get regulatory and business approval.
And that's why being informed is really excellent. It's like what you mentioned to your colleagues, and what Paul mentioned, Neville mentioned, and especially Craig, who has all the experience there. It's very important to be informed. And what we do, we have a database. We have let's say a dashboard for all the countries. What are the papers that are needed to be submitted, and step by step. That's what we do with our members, because we understand how difficult it is to have to follow on this. Otherwise, you'll have to engage sometimes local companies, which most of the time, Craig would agree, would be like offshoots of the regulators who are doing it as a business to facilitate the task, let's say. But there are very good ones also that can help. And again, good advice is always present, but it's good to have good partners. If I may add one more thing also, at MECOMED we came up with this certified partner training. So now we are training all distributors, our own distributors for all the partners within the MECOMED, but also external ones, to be certified that they know about the rules, they know about the regulations, they know about ethics and integrity, and they don't put you in a situation by sending emails which make no sense in certain times because they don't know. But this is also another step to help stepping into the Gulf. I think there's an invitation that is open by many of the countries in the Gulf. And you gave the best example, Stuart. If it's done properly, it took some time with you also given the pandemic, but when it works, it works. You can have fantastic partners there, but you need to just find them and be helped in finding them.
I'd just like to add, because the one thing perhaps I should have said a bit more clearly in my speech is that Saudi Arabia, Stuart gave an example that Saudi FDA can take up to a year, but it can also, before that, if you find a distributor first and then want the distributor to manage your registration process, you're looking at potentially a 2-year cycle. So the one thing you can do in Saudi is you can look at appointing an authorized representative to manage your registration process with Saudi FDA. So that's something you can get started sooner. You don't have to wait for your distributor to be appointed. You can actually start that process and have it going in tandem, which saves you a bit of time. Mm-hmm. The other benefit of doing that is finding a distributor. Sometimes you don't always get it right first time. And if you have used a distributor to do your registration and then you fall out of love with your distributor, it's a bit like a Catholic marriage. It's difficult to get out of, and then it's difficult to import your products because they hold the registration. So what I would say is, use the authorized representative if you can, because that gives you the independence and freedom to change a distributor in future if you need to.
That's very good advice in terms of understanding who's going to be the legal manufacturer or the distributor in terms of on the regulatory approval documents, and how those relationships could change in the future, could impact your regulatory registrations as well.
Yeah.
That's fantastic advice. I think there's a couple of questions in the chat that I'm going to put to you guys as well. So there's a question from Jay who makes the comment that the expo looks great for product-based companies, but what are your views for service-based organizations? For example, a global regulatory service, is that a good business to bring to Arab Health? And I think there's another question from Thiru, I think, who has a HealthTech software. Is that a provision? Is that a good business to bring to Arab Health as well? And what are the different challenges in those spaces around getting into the market? And I just wondered if there's any comments on either of those two from our panel.
I can comment, if I may, on the global regulatory services. With the changes in Europe, with the rapid changes across the world, I think there is more and more need to understand internationally what's happening. Otherwise, the companies will have trouble dealing with those companies, with the MDRF and other, let's say, changes. So yes, there is a space now. More and more companies are using professional services and subcontracting rather than having their own regulatory service at home. They do have consultancy with companies, and there is a room as far as we're concerned. We know as MECOMED, because some of these regulatory affair consultancies come to us to be able to be associated as associate partners, so that they can access the 40 of the 50 companies that we deal with. So yes, there is room for that.
Yeah, I would add that Arab Health is a great event, but it's what you get out of Arab Health is only as good as what you prepare to put in the first place. In other words, if you turn up at Arab Health and expect all sorts of amazing things to happen, you're going to be disappointed. If, on the other hand, you in the 3 or 4 months leading up to Arab Health, you actually prepare the ground, do your research, contact key stakeholders, set up meetings in advance, and then use Arab Health to have those meetings and meet with stakeholders, then you can get an awful lot out of the event.
I would echo that last comment. So we got in touch with the ABHI and DIT, who have specialist healthcare representatives in the different markets prior to the event, to understand and start triaging what companies do they know are going to be there, who are in the region can we contact and invite to meetings. And before we even turned up to the event, every day we had half our day filled with meetings already, which was a great way to be. Obviously, you meet lots of people when you're there. One of the questions that was raised about software, medical technology software. MEDOVATE's very much a medical device business, but when I was at Arab Health in 2019, there were software-based medical technology companies there, and they were there because when they can engage with healthcare providers in the Middle East, those are large providers. So, for example, SAFIRA in UAE, they run big hospital groups, a bit like it's not quite like national procurement, the NHS supply chain in the UK, but these are big hospital groups that if they acquire, you get to get your product or service rolled out in a number of hospitals. And that's one of the benefits of the Middle East. When you actually get to there selling your product or service, you're selling to a number of players, not just one hospital at one point in time. These are big providers of healthcare, and obviously that can offer you potentially bigger contracts for your products or services.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that, Stuart. I think there's a real appetite for digital services and digital products and software as a service as well in the right context in that market. I think, as all our speakers have emphasised, you got to do all the hard yards before you get there, and use the expertise that's available to you before you get to the show to set up your meeting. I can remember being on the stand with you, Stuart, in 2019, and there was, I think, Orca were next door to you as well, and you guys had more meetings lined up before you got there than some of the other companies who were just expecting things to happen. And I think you both reaped the benefits of that over time as well. So I think I can't emphasize enough that the importance of getting your ducks in a row before you get there, and getting the ball rolling early, and then prosecuting some of those leads after the show as well is really important as well. You've got to keep working, but the opportunity in those markets is clearly there, I think, and I think that's really important.
And Neville, if I may add one thing, just to follow up on what you mentioned. The job I do for MECOMED is a pro bono. I have a day job with a medical device company, of course, and I've done this for so many years in the area, like Craig. And Arab Health I attended all Arab Health meetings, and Arab Health is a venue for us that's so important when you are a principal, when you have a company. Besides the fact that if you're looking for a distributor, after you have the distributor and after you are represented in the area, this is a fantastic venue to have your meetings with your principals. There's no event in the world where you will have them all together in the areas in the same place. We used to book the week before and the week after, and we used to book a suite in a hotel which is very close to Arab Health, sometimes get even transportation organized so that we can have 1 hour at a time meetings with our partners, putting the budgets for the year after, and also reviewing the business. So it's a great opportunity, not only for fishing for business or getting some new business, but also for continuation of the business and maintaining the business. So great event. And advice, if you have a demonstration to make, okay, you have the booth, of course, and ABHI is offering the possibility to have a space. But also, if you would like to have meetings, and despite the presence of meeting rooms, book a hotel room, which is not far away from the area, with a possibility, a suite or something with a space. The hotels will be much more expensive the closer you get to the event. Actually, they put the price up even months before. But find this venue where you can have, when you have serious leads, where you can have the serious meetings then. Because I would say exactly what Craig said. Don't overestimate that walking through Arab Health, you will be able to have the great meetings. It's too busy, and you will be overwhelmed. What you need to do is to pre-organize, set the meetings before. You might find a company you would like when you are there, but have a space where you can have a meeting with the local person, and make sure that you have the transportation. Let's say Plan B. Taxis are available. Transportation is really good, but it's very busy. So make sure if you rent a car a couple of months before, maybe it's a good idea to have a car at your disposal. Think about the small details going to a concert, and then extrapolate that to Arab Health, how you can manage you being there. So great place, but it will be busy.
Yeah. I think that's
I was just going to say it's a good practical suggestion, that I think, to be honest. It's, you know, if you've not been to the show before, the scale is quite something, and all of the headaches that come with that scale are very obvious and on show when it comes to trying to organize your time, stick to meeting schedules, and make life easy for yourself. So so again, I mean, if you know, any of the companies that kind of want a steer, we're very happy to kind of you know, make some suggestions around maybe where you might want to base yourself, and so on. We have actually a number of sort of partnerships, if you like, with hotel chains as part of the UK presence and pavilion there, which provide discount codes on some of that accommodation and so on. I think from our perspective as ABHI, sort of organising some of these activities that often take place in the evenings, it's great advice to locate those in a nearby hotel, something that is walkable. I mean, you will pay more, of course, for that accommodation to be that close to the exhibition centre, but having the ability to actually walk in and out rather than having to perhaps fight your way to find taxis or what have you. I mean, it's the sort of communications in and out of the exhibition centre have improved dramatically now, of course, with the railway and that kind of stop which came about in recent years. But it's still a real challenge. But happy to kind of, you know, share some war stories, if you like, around what's good and what's not, and provide a bit of advice around that if companies are interested.
And in January, the weather is very nice. I mean, we're not talking about the 50 degrees Celsius or the 40 degrees Celsius that we can see during the summer. In January, the weather is really very nice and very acceptable. But also there was a question from Itar, and you're talking about the 3D printing. I would say that I'm sure we have the answer. We have a special, I mean, we have a manager within MECOMED, a regulatory affairs manager, and she's really the expert. And we can answer your question. Please write to us, and we'll answer this question. I'm sure there was a regulation on 3D printing, because we have, let's say, we brought this up to the authorities by saying, okay, what do you do? Because I would tell you, some of the companies like spinal surgical companies and others, they were complaining at a certain time. How about if somebody brings in a 3D printer and starts printing, let's say, devices within the country? So this was taken into consideration, and we can answer this question to you. And they would regulate, and they did regulate somehow the 3D printing, but still you have to differentiate between the industrial and the medical, and this is where the trick is, and this is where the expert can answer you. So please write to us. We will answer you very promptly.
Fantastic. I just wonder, is there any more questions from the floor that anybody has for our panel? I think we're nearly at time. We've got a few minutes left, but if everybody has had their questions answered, we'll draw to a close. I'm not seeing any more hands up or anything like that. So I'd just like to thank all our speakers today, really, firstly, because I think we've had a great panel. We've had some lived experience as well as where to go for advice and regulatory support. It's been great just listening to the panel talk about the different skills that they have on offer and how that can help a business really get into quite a lucrative market. Please reach out to any of us on the call today if you're interested in hearing more. I think it's a team game. This you have to work collaboratively with partners. Relationships, it's business, isn't it? It's all about relationships, and I think we're very keen to help you meet and get to the right people at the right time for what you're aiming to do. So with that in mind, I'd ask for a round of applause, but it's not appropriate on Teams. I just finally like to thank all our speakers once again for their time today, and anybody who's on the call who's interested in hearing more, please reach out to ourselves at the AHSN or Paul at the ABHI, and we will triage you into the process for getting to Arab Health, plus connect you to whoever you need to be connected to make the most out of your trip. So on that note, I'll say thank you to everybody for attending today as well, and we hope to see you in Arab Health. And yes, it will not be 50 degrees when you're there, but for us Brits, even 30 can be a struggle, so bring your shorts. Take care, everyone, and thanks for joining the call today.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for the invite. Thank you, Nev.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Bye now.